Nicolas De Santis. He is devilishly handsome. He is a Pisces with an Italian heart and a Spanish cinematic soul. His mother was a movie star in Spain. Nicolas De Santis is loving husband of the fabulous swimsuit designer Melissa Oderbash, and he's proud father to 2 teenage daughters. His innovative spirit gave birth to the DESANTIS consulting firm. He took on the presidency of the Gold Mercury International Award. This is a prestigious think tank and global governance award organization which was founded by his father. He was co-founder of Europe's Apodo and creator of the game-changing MEGAVISION, which is a business reinvention system. Nicolas believes imagining with disruption and building with imagination. So let's prepare to be untangled as we dive into empowerment through complexity. Please join me in welcoming the visionary Nicolas De Santis to our Marca 2023 stage to kick us off. Nicolas, please join us.
What a great introduction. You've done an amazing job of this 100th anniversary of the Turkish Republic, and I'm so proud and happy to be here because of this. It's an incredible moment in history for Turkey. And I'm going to show you today about when you plan for 100 years, you could also plan for the next 100 years and how to do it. So, what if I could tell you that today you could master complexity? Mastering complexity is a key component of visioning the future. What if I told you that you could master disrupting industries? What if I told you that you could learn to control or understand reality better? Or even more, what if I told you you could anticipate the future? These are things that are extremely complex, and with the management of complexity, you can do them. So, how could you get such mega powers? Because these are powers, once you are able to master them, you can use them in your personal life and your business life. So my journey with you today, it's about mastering complexity so you can envision the future, and the future has to be sustainable. It is a key component now of every business strategy. I am Nicolas De Santis. I am a global vision strategist. If you're a strategist and a visionary, you have to do it on a global scale. It is a vital component of thinking global. I started Opodo, a company that went from 0 to 1.5 billion in revenues over a period of 10 years, 11 years. Now, this gives me the experience of understanding how you do a startup from 0 to such a scale, and it's part of what I do in terms of advising corporations on disruption. I've worked since a very young age with the global brands of the world, from Coca-Cola, Disney, Google, many companies, institutions like the Chelsea Football Club, and others. So, the most important message of today is this: the future cannot be predicted, but it can be created. And in those skills I mentioned earlier, those are the things you need to be able to create that future. So anyone who tells you they can predict the future, they're lying, but you can create the future. We saw it how Walt Disney created Disneyland. We saw it with Steve Jobs giving us the future of different industries, music, and then on telephony. And even a freedom fighter like Nelson Mandela is basically capable of using vision to save a nation. I created a MEGAVISION system to be able to do this, because To be able to create the future, you have to do it systematically. And this is another important message. Most companies have a strategy, but they don't have a disruptive vision of the future. They have a business plan, financial numbers, but not a disruptive vision of the future. But the disruptive future is already here. The 10x thinking, the 10x mentality is here. So every company, and every person for that matter, has an unrealized 10x disruptive potential. But they don't know it, and they don't know how to extract it. And this is what I do. I extract this out of companies. The problem also in the world today is that most people think 10%, incremental improvements rather than 10x exponential thinking. And that is a capability that I'm going to show you today on how you can use complexity. So companies focus on 10% lowering cost, or 10% more customers, or 10% increase in market share. And in some industries, it's actually not bad because of competition. But that will not do any disruption. You have to see disruption as your opportunity for change. It is the difference between thinking exponentially, using your imagination, versus the 10% that doesn't require that much hard work that every company in the world focuses on. Because corporations have lost the ability to dream. And that's something that I bring back to them. So have to think, envisioning 10x, what is your end game in the future? To do this, you have to think in decades. You can no longer think in years. I'm going to show you some examples, but if you look at that line, the straight line of 10%, that's typical industries are on a 10% growth curve. They don't need to do much hard work. They already control their markets, but they're not disrupting. Until somebody comes in and starts a new way of doing what they're doing and create that curve that goes into the future, a new way of doing things, disrupting that straight line. No better example of the super traditional music industry that we all know how was disrupted. So they missed this point. When digitalization came, this was the miracle that you could do for music. You could personalize music, and the record companies did not care. But you know exactly who cared. First, Apple and Steve Jobs created a software to be able to manage your music, download better. They created the iPod, which actually has been retired last year, the last iPod. And then, if you look at what happened to Apple, they missed the streaming wars. And Spotify came in and took over the streaming, now becoming the biggest streaming platform in the world. But you can see how the record industry kept thinking 10%, while other people were going to break that pattern. This is also why the train companies did not start airlines, why the telcos did not invent Skype, and why hotels did not think of Airbnb. Because as long as they had this 10%, they were happy. And this is why you have to think imaginatively. This means that companies are mentally stuck. They're thinking about the past more than they're thinking about the future, and it's also because they don't have the tools to do it. And that's what I bring to them. So, megavisioning the future is also about leaving the old world where we're living and thinking about worlds that do not exist. And the only way to do this is to change your mental model. The techniques that I use is science fiction. I create worlds of tomorrow for corporations, worlds that they need to create, new products, new services, new business models, and I bring them to the present for them to explore, and we find disruption this way. If you think about this movie in 1993 was science fiction. This was about, can we bring back dinosaurs? They made a great franchise of movies about Jurassic Park, but guess what? Science fiction becomes reality. Colossal Labs is the company that is going to bring back the woolly mammoth in 2027, through technology of biology and genetics, they can bring back this species to us. The reason why they do it is also because they want to protect species that might become extinct. What I've just shown you, though, is the ability to envision the future requires a great understanding and management of complexity. So the big question of today is, how do you actually manage complexity? How do you do this? How do you envision the future and manage this great complexity? Because complexity can be your greatest friend or your greatest enemy. You had to make it into your friend. So when you have a pathway that goes into the future, when you're thinking about what can I do, what company can I create, there's always going to be complexity in the center blocking you or helping you in that pathway. So to understand complexity, because for me it was critical to be able to help companies, was the creation of a project called GLOGO, that stands for Global Governance. This project, the briefing I gave myself was, how can I explain to a Martian, if a Martian landed here in this venue and asked us, you have 5 minutes to explain to me how the world works, how would I do it? And when I gave myself that briefing, I didn't know it was going to take me 5 years. Now I could tell the Martian, look, there's something called Wikipedia. Go read that 60, 70 million pages and come back. But they said, I told you I have 5 minutes. They would pulverize us. There's a big misunderstanding also between what's complicated and what's complex. So I could not survive in the world of business if I did not know how to manage complexity. So the project of GLOGO was about organizing global complexity in our planet. And I realized that there's billions of things happening in the world. I created this concept called organized complexity, which is like a paradox. How can you possibly organize complexity? And I organized it in 8 global areas. The first area is international law and humanitarian affairs, global health, global science and technology, global culture, global resources, global economic and social policy, global peace and security, very relevant today, global environment. So I organized global complexity in these 8 global areas. I created this tool called GLOGO that I mentioned. And the most important fact is that every area affects the areas that are in the same model. What happens in peace and security affects resources. What happens in resources affects the population. What happens in the environment affects the areas. So the world is an interconnected system. Of course, under each global area, there's thousands and thousands of sub-areas. We are monitoring those areas with the tool. We're following what's going on in each of these areas. This GLOGO takes me to meet very important people to discuss the future of these areas, from presidents of nations to great people about protecting the environment, like Al Gore, or people that think about the future of cities, or even our friend that's now passed, Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, to talk about the future of space travel. We created the GLOGO platform to put all this information in. It's a great tool that we use in our projects. It's an amazing resource. GLOGO tells us realities like this salamander that is being studied because it can recreate every organ in its body. If it loses an eye, it can create a new eye. If it loses its spinal cord, it can recreate the spinal cord. It's a miracle of the future of science. Or companies like Universal Hydrogen, for a decade, they've been studying how to bring hydrogen to flight. They're doing it in 2025. All this information is coming to us from GLOGO. And GLOGO gives you what I call the mega picture, because people talk about the big picture. That's no longer enough. You got to think mega 10x to be able to succeed. So our planetary problems can only be solved if we think 10x. Wars, climate, hunger, poverty, health. We cannot solve these problems on a short-term thinking path. We got to think 10x, 10, 20 years in the future to solve them. I presented Glogo at the United Nations, and the Secretary General of UNESCO said, I want to support this because for the first time I can understand how the world works. And he gave us his support. So, do we have a future? Yes, if we think 10x solutions, not if we keep thinking small 10%. And also, we need to start thinking of ourselves as a planetary civilization, not just citizens of a nation. We got to go beyond that thought of nation states. So to save our planet, we have to start mega-visioning the future. My book is out next year. If you want to pre-register to receive information about it on desantis.vision/book. Everything and more that I'm explaining today will be in that book. And my last message to you today is you have one life. So let today be the time where you start thinking anew with this 10x concept, thinking in decades, making complexity your friend. And I want you to think, dream, live, and love 10x, because you only have one life. So thank you very much, and I hope you're ready to start your 10x MEGAVISION journey.
Fantastic. Turkish for you. Çok teşekkürler, Nicolas.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nicolas De Santis.